Thank you all. I now have it.
Welcome to the Economic Standing Policy Committee meeting for Wednesday, April the 7th, 2021. We'll start with the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we're gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains. And
Janessa, you appear to be muted, so we can't hear the mayor right now.
Unmute, Janessa. Hold on.
Just fixing a technical problem there. Okay. Welcome to the Economic Standing Policy Committee for Wednesday, April the 7th, 2021. We'll begin the meeting with the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We'll now move to a roll call.
Mayor Spearman, Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Councillor Kaufman.
Present.
Councillor Crowson.
Present.
Councillor Morrow.
Yeah.
Councillor Parker.
Present.
Acting Mayor Higgin.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Here.
Mayor Spearman.
Present.
Councillor Campbell.
Present.
All accounted for. Thank you.
Thank you. I now have a motion from Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. Consent agenda. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Economic Standing Policy Committee held on Wednesday, March 24th, 2021 be approved, and that the Mayor and the City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. Councillor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Are there any errors or omissions?
I see none.
There being none, call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Thank you. I now have a motion from Acting Mayor Higgin. Adoption of agenda. Be it resolved that the agenda of the Economic Standing Policy Committee meeting on April the 7th, 2021 be adopted as presented. City Clerk, are there any amendments?
There are none. Thank you.
Thank you. Acting Mayor Higgin.
Call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to presentations. I'm going to invite Ms. Mandy Parker, Corporate Sustainability Manager, to speak to us about energy conservation, master plan, and strategy. Mr. Dalton, did you want to introduce this?
No, I'll turn it over to Ms. Parker. Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Parker. Please proceed.
Perfect, thank you. Janessa, are you pulling up the presentation? That's the actual report. It's attachment number 1, I believe. Or not attachment 1, let me just double check. There it is. Perfect. Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to present. We'll make sure it's quick today. My name is Mandy Parker from Corporate Sustainability, and I have Shane Thompson from Associated Engineering with us, and we just want to quickly talk to you about the Energy Conservation Master Plan and Strategy. Next slide, please. So why are we here? We wanted to set the context of the Energy Conservation Master Plan and Strategy. We wanted to share it with you at a very high level. Some of you have seen it already. There is a reference document that was created that I'll talk about at the end, but it's the Energy Conservation Master Plan Initiative Review and Reference. Just talk quickly about the alignment of the Energy Conservation Master Plan and recommendations. Next slide, please. So just in setting context, the Energy Conservation Master Plan was a council initiative during the operating budget as N84 and is detailed on this slide. Next slide, please. Additionally, on March 9th, 2020, a council resolution was approved for the Partners for Climate Protection Milestone 2 with a reduction target of 40% of greenhouse gases from the 2018 baseline by 2030. And I'll pass it over to Shane for the quick overview. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Mandy. The agenda today will go through some background, industry context, energy use throughout the assignment, what initiatives and best practices were established, the implementation plan and strategy, and then Mandy will go over the next steps and we'll open it up for any questions. Next slide, please. This just provides an overview and some definitions around terminology. There's a lot of terminology around climate and energy. This just helps to establish that. So when we're talking about energy conservation, we're looking at avoiding and reducing energy use across the city departments and highlighting the integration of this in various other components of the city's operations. Next slide, please. So some background, we engaged many of the business units across the city in several workshops to discuss opportunities and development of the initiatives to help establish buy-in. And the table just shows a list of facilities there that were included under this assignment. Next slide, please. We looked at industry context, so there's many municipal, provincial and federal organisations that provide guidance with respect to energy efficiency and GHG reductions, as well as funding agencies such as FCM and Municipal Climate Change Action Centre that have the potential to provide funding towards many of these initiatives that were recommended in the assignment. Next slide, please. So we looked at energy use across the entire city by business unit. Main thing to highlight here, water, wastewater, stormwater is the largest user of electricity and natural gas combined, followed by rec, culture and community services. In terms of fuel use, transit makes up 44%, and interestingly, 76% of total fuel use across all city departments or business units was diesel. This is important to establish, to identify the significant areas of opportunity for energy conservation. Next slide, please. This slide just shows the breakdown of energy with respect to GHG contributions, again, closely tied to electricity, which makes up 67% of GHG contributions, followed by the other energy sources. Next slide, please. So initiatives and best practices, these highlight and summary a bunch of current initiatives that were identified under the Corporate Sustainability Report and also the 2020 Partners for Climate Protection Milestone 2 report. So a lot of great work already done ahead of this assignment. Next slide, please. We broke the initiatives into enabling initiatives and technological and operational initiatives. Enabling initiatives are those to remove barriers and provide opportunities to improve energy efficient culture, to make energy conservation front of mind. The main thing to highlight in this is the identification of energy audits for the high energy using facilities that will provide more detailed energy use analysis and provide the basis for energy conservation initiatives. Next slide, please. Technological and operational initiatives. So these are specific energy conservation initiatives by business unit. And as you can see, water, wastewater, stormwater have the greater opportunity for energy conservation given their high energy use and the amount of equipment in those facilities. Next slide, please. The implementation plan that was developed is based on current initiatives, a 1 to 5 year outlook and a 5 to 10 year outlook. The initiatives are being reviewed or have been reviewed with respect to current business plans and CIP, and they should also be considered in terms of bundling initiatives together to get economies of scale and also align with potential funding opportunities out there. Next slide, please. And lastly, this is just showing the importance of establishing good governance around energy conservation and other initiatives that have been either developed in terms of policies, strategies and plans and tactics, and integrating all of those into an overall governance strategy and framework, and the importance of agility in implementing these, in just learning, reviewing, revising and adjusting as these get implemented. Next slide, please. I'll hand it back to Mandy. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Shane. So there's a list of some of the higher level plans that we've included, as well as some previous council direction. What I wanted to put the focus on is the initiative review and reference document that was prepared. We've provided the initiatives from the March 2nd, 2020 presentation for the Partners for Climate Protection, and that makes up about 20% of the emissions reduction that would be required for the target. Now, there's 20% approximately that still needs to be accounted for, but the 20% that we have still needs to be approved and come to fruition. So if you do have a chance to take a look at the document, we do have the PCP initiatives in there, as well as the ones that were from the Energy Conservation Master Plan. And we've listed them out by business unit and then commented on them starting on page 7 on the far right hand side, if they're approved or planned, or if they're not even underway yet in terms of the CIP and other funding opportunities. So if you see the green text, it's considered approved. The red text means it's planned but needs consideration or further consideration, and it's in black text or blank, it means it's not in the works at this time. Each section was run by the specific departments for clarification, and just if an item is being presented as it comes up for the CIP 2022 to 2026, you'll be able to see it in the right hand side of the table. So as for a recommendation, just asking for you to accept this as information and consider approving funding the initiatives as they come forward. Thank you for your time.
Okay, questions from council? Okay, that's quite a comprehensive presentation. I do thank you on behalf of council for this detailed presentation. It's reassuring that administration has an energy conservation strategy and a plan, and there is a lot to it, a lot of technical substance to this. So thank you for informing us as to what your plans are, and we look forward to further reports on progress against the plan. Again, any further questions from council? Thank you very much to our presenters for presenting today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a resolution from Councillor Carlson, Energy Conservation Master Plan and Strategy. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the presentation and report as information. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I do appreciate my light went off. All the information that was provided in the information. I look forward to discussions during our upcoming capital improvement plan. Unless there's anything further, I'll call for the vote.
Okay, question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to the next presentation, which is Fire Chief Mark Rathwell regarding fire and EMS.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
I also have Deputy Chief Greg Adair with me.
Okay.
Today we'd like to present, you can go to the next slide, please. So we'd like to present community projects. This is under Section D, Fire and EMS ask. This is in regards to relocation of Fire Hall number 3. That's currently on 16th Avenue South. We have the description there. The total cost for the relocation would be $27.238 million. And the operating cost, while it looks very high there, it also includes the current operating costs of the current number 3 station as well until that asset was dealt with. Next slide, please. So why do we need to relocate is a great question. We need to look at this clearly. This is a 60-year-old fire station that's proven its time for, it's done its time for the city, and we're struggling to meet the spatial requirements of functional modern fire service at the moment. This station is the only one that hasn't been either renovated or looked at for upgrades in quite a few years. We also want to provide better fire coverage in that south end of the city, and that falls into the HERF requirements. We also have some spatial pressures here at our number 1 station from administration, fire prevention, our IT operations, emergency management, and also the PSEC. We've actually consolidated every small boardroom in this building and turned it into office space. And again, we're trying to manage the future growth, and this is one way we'd like to present. We also are spatially challenged for keeping all of the equipment that we have in our stores indoors. So this would be some of our outdoor boats and other equipment of our specialty teams that have required more and more equipment over time. And then the last point I'd like to, why this relocation is important is with continued growth, we've also inherited the airport. This is a piece that's going to require space in terms of some type of apparatus at some point, and also that South Station will be the primary station responding to the airport for any emergency there. Next slide, please. Again, 60-year-old fire station. The city has grown significantly since 1964. Next slide. And I think this picture sort of speaks for itself. You can see where the station is located. I believe the old drive-in there used to be right off 24th. And now we've commercialized and residentialized that whole area. Next slide, please. So future South Lethbridge growth, obviously we've got lots of growing plans into that southeast part of the city. Obviously not to the west, we'll just be falling into the coulees, but again, lots of growth predicted in that area, and we want to be positioned in an appropriate spot so we can position that station in a way that we can encompass that whole area. Next slide, please. So this diagram actually shows us that positioning and how by positioning it in such a way we can get in that 10-minute response zone, and that helps with the HERF requirements. And next slide, please. Station 3 at the moment is just too small, and it doesn't meet our functional requirements, especially of a modern fire service. I think the next slide, please. This shows us a picture of Station 3 when it opened in '64, and what we currently have in it today. On the left-hand side of that slide, you'll see those are the vehicles we would like to put into that station. Obviously, they're not going to fit. We want to make sure that we have the right resources in the right location so we can respond appropriately to our community when it calls for us. And as you can see, we just cannot do that at the moment with all the other, with the spatial requirements that are necessary. Next slide, please. So again, back to the HERF. Sorry, I had that out of order. By staying in that 10 minutes, we meet the building standards, and that can help reduce costs for some of our builders from 10 to 20,000 per single family dwelling. Next slide, please. Again, just more on our codes around the HERF. Again, this is a driver for us when we're trying to position a fire station in the correct location. Next slide, please. So the spatial pressure, again, we are a growing community. We need to make sure we have all the right resources in place. Some of our core function piece, like our fire prevention group and our PSCC, our emergency management, all of those folks are going to need space. And as the current building is full, and I want to just point out a couple of those things to describe full. Like I had mentioned earlier, we've eliminated all of our small boardrooms into working spaces. They're all now offices. We've also had to repurpose a smaller storage room in the basement to become a quiet room for our PSCC group. We are literally full. So we're looking to make sure that not only do we meet the requirements today, but we're trying to meet requirements 20, 30, maybe 50 years down the road, because our stations just don't move. We're a slower growing community, but we can position these appropriately so we can manage growth in our community for decades to come. Next slide, please. So the risks of not approving this project. Next slide, please. So we've looked at the potential hazards for the city of Lethbridge, and this is a document we've all looked at previously. The wildfire component is always an extreme risk to our community. Currently at number 3, we don't have room to put a wildland truck in that station. We've had to go with the immediate pressures, which are EMS, and that's why there's 2 ambulances there, and obviously that fire apparatus, the single fire apparatus. The other part is just the location of the station it's not ideally located anymore to maintain all the future growth that the city's looking to do. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, some of the HERF issues and how this can affect our developers in the community. And of course, with the airport, we're going to have to deal. We are the primary response group for the airport, and as that airport grows, and as we hope it grows, we need to adjust and have the appropriate airport firefighting apparatus and staff for that. We will not have to man the station yet, but we still have to respond there. We need the appropriate equipment. So one of those bays in that station needs to be marked as airport, and we need to figure out what that will be and what that'll look like for the future. Next slide, please. As we've already mentioned, we've got some spatial issues at number 1. This is a downtown station at the moment. We're trying to get all of our equipment indoors. Again, it's expensive equipment. We want to make sure it's maintained and stored appropriately. And we need that contemporary design. Again, this will help us support with on-site training and many more other functions as we go forward. One of those being our emergency management component. We are crammed for space here. We have to bring in a lot of people to manage a large incident. We're looking to try to modernize that emergency management approach, and we believe that we can do that through the construction of this new facility. So again, we're trying to put a lot of pieces into one building. Next slide, please. The relocation aligns with our strategic goals. It also aligns with our fire master plan from 2017. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Any questions or thoughts?
Are there any questions from council? None? Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thanks, Chief, for the information and presentation. Can you just help me out with relieving pressure from Station 1? Did we not build that big enough?
No, sir. Well, at the time, yes, and over time, we've filled it up, and we've had to deal with many more issues as we've gone along. Our PSCC has changed, our IT demands have changed, our administrative needs have changed, and through that, we've adapted the station. Deputy Chief Adair, what was the original office numbers?
So currently we have 22 office spaces and 33 people are working out of those office spaces as it sits today. So we have 33 people working out of 22 office or 26 office spaces.
And several of those office spaces, like I had mentioned, used to be small boardrooms for meetings, and now we've adapted those into 2 offices. We've actually split the old chief's office into 2 offices. Again, we're just trying to accommodate all the pieces that we need to have administratively to manage our fire EMS work.
Thanks for that, and nice to see you, Greg. Further question to that is there any benefit to, I guess not benefit, but any thought or possibilities of not, of moving off-site, renting space perhaps, or does it need to be contained within the building itself? And sorry, I'm losing my voice.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So for things like the emergency management, we need to have a facility that's a 24/7 available station or structure that also has all the emergency components to it. So when the power is out everywhere else, we still need power at our fire stations. So that's why we've sort of embedded the emergency management and PSCC groups into this. Just because all the lights are out for most folks doesn't mean that we stop. We still need to have all those other processes running so we can support the community in a large emergency or a small emergency.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Spearman.
Okay, Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Chief, Deputy Chief, for the presentation, the information. Under current location, Station 3, your map is a little difficult to read, unfortunately. Are we meeting HERF requirements in the Deep South, or are we expanding beyond that?
We're starting to expand beyond those. And of course, with the future development plans, we'll certainly be outside.
Okay, thank you. That also then, HERF obviously wouldn't apply to the airport, but the closer we get to the airport, the quicker we will be able to respond. Is the future plan for service at the airport to maintain some sort of apparatus at the airport as well that would be staffed by people employed at the airport? As sort of first line of approach or first line of defense?
Depending on, there's a lot of variables with this. Transport Canada has clear guidelines when you actually have to staff the airport, and we're a long ways from that. The other component to it is we might have a particular company that comes in, an airline that says we need this sort of service on site, and that would be a piece that we'd have to deal with as that came up. Right now, we do not need to staff it, and by putting equipment at the airport, like we do, there is a current fire hall there. It's a problem for me. If my staff aren't there all the time to hands-on practice, train with that equipment, it isn't seen enough, it isn't used enough. So my preference is to be able to keep things close where staff are able to get at it, train with it regularly so they're familiar with the equipment. So when they're called to use it, and an airport incident can happen within the airport boundaries or outside of it, that equipment is ready to go at a moment's notice, and that's where the staff will be to grab it and use it.
Okay, thank you. How does the change in contract with Alberta Health Services and EMS Service change the factor, the design of the building? You're still identifying ambulances out of there. Is that the future direction?
I don't know, sir. It all depends on where we go with the EMS contract. And unfortunately, HS hasn't sat down with us to do any contract work. We do know our EMS ground ambulance contract expires of March of 23. And until then, it's business as usual. We're hoping that in the next 6 to 8 months that we'll be sitting down with them, working on the contract with them for sure. I'm anticipating a long-term contract with them.
You are or you're not?
I am, but I'm an eternal optimist, sir.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's poke your pessimism here a little bit, or
okay.
Maybe expose mine. Long term, if we're designing this structure, the proposal is to design a new structure. If ambulances come out of it, then you gain capacity in the space, obviously, and
yes,
it would be designed for any current apparatus. So it creates that interchangeability of equipment.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions for now. Thanks, Mark.
Okay. Thank you. There's no one in the queue. I'll ask some questions myself. The ask seems to be like another fire hall #1 in order to handle the administrative requirements and the meeting requirements. Is that correct? Would it be on the scale of fire hall #1?
It'd be similar, sir. It'd be like a second floor on top of the fire hall.
Okay.
Not the 3-story. That's not the anticipated design.
So would we be open to consider alternatives other than that? Specifically, I'm looking at what Calgary's doing with their latest fire hall. It's a $2 million build. A company that supplied it actually lives in Lethbridge, or operates in Lethbridge. If we built a fire hall like that towards the airport, would that meet our operational requirements but not our administrative requirements?
So there's a couple of factors with that. So I've actually spoken with Extreme Portable Buildings. That's the group here in Lethbridge, because I've followed the whole Walden Station in Calgary build. Very fascinating. It is a portable structure designed semi-permanent without a foundation. It's designed to go into a community where you anticipate you'll be moving the station at some point to actually find the right location for it at some point. It is a cheaper structure. We won't get the longevity out of it. Typically, I would imagine we could add on as many bays as we wanted onto something like that, but you're right, it wouldn't meet all the needs that we're looking to meet.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Sperman. This is probably, I don't know if it's to you, Chief, or to City Manager or City Treasurer. The sheets that are provided, pardon me, aren't following the usual allocations per year and operating costs, etc. Chief, I believe you said that this net operating cost is high because for the first couple of years there'll be 2 stations. Is that what I understood? And
it's only because even if Station 3, the current Station 3, we move into a new one, we still have to carry those the continuing costs of that structure until it's managed or dealt with. I don't know if that's sold or what you can do with that station.
Thank you. So do you have an idea is this net increase to operating costs the standalone? So we'll keep the operating costs that are currently in the operating budget, but this is the addition. So this 627 will be still ongoing. It won't reduce in the future.
It should reduce in the future if I've got that right. Great. I'm pretty sure I got that right. It will reduce, right, once the 3's off the books.
Once the current Station 3 operating costs are taken care of, whether it's repurposed or sold, those operating costs will reduce whatever the 627 out of the new fire station operating costs would be.
Okay, so Hayley. Go ahead, Hayley. I'll shut up.
Normally that should be the net increase. So if that's not correct, we'll need to adjust or fix that. but we only show the net increase typically in the sheets. And just to kind of, if I may respond to your question about how they're not, doesn't show the timing at this point. That was intentional. We just were showing all of the projects, just given the timing. We'll need to, for the May deliberations, we'll go through and identify the timing of the project. But given the limited funding that's available, it will likely all just say undetermined funding. But we will start to kind of map out what that looks like. But at this point, we're just introducing projects.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Because, yeah, I think I'd need to know whether that's 627 increase ongoing or if that's will be reduced in future. That'll be helpful for me. And further to that, have we done any work on the current number 3 site to know, is it sellable? Is it worth anything? Or are we gonna have to pay someone to take it off our hands?
Being stuck between 2 fuel stations on top of an old oil refinery site, I'm not quite sure what that would look like, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mayor Spearman.
Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. It sounded to me like Councillor Carlson was interested in the site, so if you want to unload it to him quickly. Just curious about the strategy, how this then fits into strategy for future fire halls, because we're obviously building one on the west right now. If we're talking about HERF, we're going to be looking at moving the one on Whoop Up Drive. What's the schedule for it on the west side? Is it a 5-year, 10-year window?
So that one's actually out a little bit further. When Station 5, so that's the new one that's just being finished today. Ideally, what would have happened is the number 2 station would have been relocated, and 5, those 2 would have been built concurrently. And then 2 would have been shut down, because that gives that balance on the west side, sort of the north-south balance. Because 5 was sort of taken out of sort of the projected timeline, that would change things for us.
But this one is more of a priority in terms of meeting need. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, certainly for meeting needs for their community, our south side station is sort of the station that's lacking the greatest. It's a small station. We've got lots of building issues, and we want to, like I said, we want to continue to move forward with our community and making sure we've got all the right apparatuses in the right position.
Okay, thank you. Just back to HERF, if we can, 2 questions on that. First, is there any requirement for the city or for the delivery of fire service, or is this requirement on HERF something that is imposed purely upon the building trade?
Purely on the building trade.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Secondly, if we move further south, we move further away from the existing area, from the core, from the established neighborhoods, there's no HERF impact, at least on existing. It would be on any infill that occurs, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Final question. You've got 33 staff and 26 spaces. Does enough of the staff, the majority of that staff, move to a new station then as well?
Some of those staff would move to the station. We try to find that balance. So like currently right now we have IT and PSEC all on the same floor. We try to separate that. And again, COVID has been, you know, for all the negatives of it, it's actually shown us some flaws in how we do things. To be able to keep that separation when we have an event like this, we're jammed in. So we need to have a little bit more space to keep those things safer.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize there was a Jevons paradox on office space as well, that if you build office space, you fill it. So I guess that's something for consideration. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks, Mr.
Okay. Are there any further questions from council? Okay. Okay, hearing none, we'll thank our presenters and we'll deal with the resolution. I have a resolution from Councillor Campbell, Fire and EMS Capital Improvement Plan. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentations as information. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you very much for the information. And unless there's any other questions, I'll call for the vote.
Okay, question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to 4.3, Public Safety Communication Center, alternate. I would guess that this would be Chief Rathwell as well.
This, Your Worship, I think this should be Mr. McDonald.
Okay.
I don't think Mr. Westerson is
Mr. Westerson or Mr. McDonald, are you there?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Joel McDonald. I'm the operations manager for the PSCC. CIP request I'm bringing forward is to update the alternate or backup 911 center. Next slide, please. The scope of this project is to renovate the east side of the old courthouse basement floor to host the alternate PSCC as a fully redundant location for 911 and emergency dispatch and communications. Currently, the alternate is located on the west side of the old courthouse, and that was a temporary solution when we moved to this fire hall. This project creates adequate space and improves the security for the technology and equipment required to perform our mission critical duties and provides basic necessities for 24-hour operations such as a bathroom, kitchen, and break room. The cost of this project will be approximately $700,000 with an operating cost of approximately $2,000 a year. Next slide, please. The need for this project is to meet the requirements as mandated by the provincial 911 standards, stating that every 911 center must designate a secondary physical location, and that location must be independent and not reliant on any technology or equipment from the primary site. We must be able to provide continuous 911 services should there be a critical failure at our primary site. Meeting this requirement allows us to continue receiving the 911 grant funding from the province and our rural revenues, which equates to approximately $903,000 a year. As shown in these photos, the current setup at the west end of the old courthouse has insufficient space to host the needed number of workstations. The technology has been installed ad hoc on the walls, and there's insufficient cable management and physical security measures for the hardware and data stored there. And currently the basement floor at the old courthouse does not have any facilities required for 24/7 continuous operations. Next slide, please. The desired outcomes are to improve the necessary security requirements to protect the staff, data, and technology, to install facilities that can provide bathrooms and kitchen areas with running potable water, to replace existing office furniture and computers which are beyond end of life, and to upgrade, renovate, modernize the basic building space on the east end, such as the floors, walls, ceilings, lights, and paint. Currently, the space still has the original 1952 seaweed green carpet, mustard yellow walls from when it first opened. In reviewing this CIP, we completed a risk assessment, and that risk assessment highlighted 7 key failures. Next slide, please. These would be addressed by this project. So currently the site does not meet the Alberta 901 standards or the NFPA 1221 guidelines for a communication center. There's insufficient space to host a full staffing complement during our peak times, and the systems are not currently geo-redundant, and as such, a failure at the primary site could result in significant delays and require manual procedures to be used for processing and dispatching emergency services. The site also requires improved security measures appropriate for the nature of technology and information hosted at that site. The current equipment and furnishings are at end of life and are due for replacement. They were moved over in they were purchased in 2004 at the police station originally, and then moved to the old courthouse for this temporary backup in 2011. Finally, the current site lacks the necessary facilities as described required to support 24-hour operations, including things like a kitchen, bathroom, and break room. Next slide, please. The recommendations to mitigate these risks identified and to meet compliance with the Alberta 901 standards is to renovate the east side of the old courthouse as described. This would include installing the necessary facilities for eating, drinking, and bathroom breaks, would move to fully geo-redundant IT systems to ensure full continuity of emergency services, independent of equipment or technology from our primary site. It would also involve installing the appropriate security measures to adequately protect the staff, the technology, and the data when in use or not in use at this location. Next slide, please. This project aligns with the Council strategic plan as the alternate PSCC ensures capacity to provide local delivery of 911 and dispatch services for a safe and secure community. It supports livable communities and people places for all, by providing business continuity for an effective and efficient service to ensure our citizens and communities are being served by local staff who understand the culture, the people, the places, locations within our 901 jurisdiction. And finally, through accountable leadership, we can continue to support and foster the key relationships we have with the province and municipal affairs, with our key emergency service stakeholders such as police and fire, as well as with the 24 other municipalities we provide 911 and fire dispatch services for here in Southwest Alberta. Next slide. This project aligns with our corporate strategic plan, as the updated PSCC will ensure people excellence by providing the space and technology to promote the health and wellness of the users, as well as creating an adequate space for training of new recruits and for the ongoing education and professional development of our existing staff. For performance and customer service excellence, this project will provide a site that enables the Lethbridge 901 Centre to be best in class and will allow us to deliver 911 emergency communications to the public and for the agencies we serve during emergencies, critical system failures, or large-scale events such as street wheelers, protests, whoop-up days, or the large grass fires like we recently had. Again, the importance of this site is to ensure that we maintain a strong relationship with our business partners, stakeholders, and citizens, and can maintain that high level of confidence and trust from the citizens and agencies we serve during their greatest time of need. Next slide. Within the internal PSCC strategic plan, this project ensures that we can continue to maintain our learning and development, maintain our Alberta accreditation for 901 centres by meeting the requirements of the standards, and ensure the PSCC has the necessary and redundant resources to support our internal and external partners and the citizens we serve. Next slide. The schedule of this project would require construction, which would take 5 to 8 months once approved. And the estimated budget, as said, was $700,000 for construction and renovations to the east end of the old courthouse basement. Next slide. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I will answer any questions.
Questions from council? Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
I'm just wondering if you ripped out all that retro colored walls and rugs, you could make some money on it maybe.
You probably could. The walls in the basement also have like a leather vinyl on them as well too, so that's interesting.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Any other questions? I guess my question would be, how much space is there left in the old courthouse? Underutilized.
So currently, this space that we're looking to renovate is vacant and could be utilized to serve this purpose, which would then free up the corner we're currently in, and that would be vacant for use by somebody else. But this is the only space left in the courthouse to be renovated or to be used.
Okay, so just thinking back to the chief's previous presentation about lack of administrative space and office meeting space, and whether some of that would help us with our cost challenges going forward. So thank you. No further questions from council. I will thank Mr. McDonald for his presentation and have a resolution here from Councillor Morrow. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, moved by Councillor Morrow. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentations as information. Councillor Morrow?
Question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Thank you. Okay, 4.4. Presenter, I believe, is Ms. Carrie Nightingale. Facility Services Manager, CIP Section D projects for facility services is Ms. Nightingale, is on the screen. Welcome. Look forward to your presentation.
Okay, great, thank you. Thanks to the committee for
having us present today. Facility Services has two programs that are approved in our current CIP cycle that we wish to continue in the next cycle. Sam Kennard, our engineering planner, has been the one that's been administering both of those programs over the last 4 years. And he's going to continue on with the presentation and answer questions at the end. And I think that is all I need to introduce Sam with, so we'll turn it over to Sam.
Welcome.
Thank you, Carrie, and good afternoon, everyone. Next slide, please. As Carrie mentioned, Facility Services has two projects in the CIP, and they're both a continuation from the previous CIP. The first project is the Facility Assessment and Accessibility Upgrades. So this is a continuation of the previously approved program from the 2018 CIP, Project D12. This program involves dedicated funding to renovate city-owned facilities to improve accessibility. Example projects could include the installation of barrier-free ramps, automatic doors, washroom renovations, and widening of doorways. Since the program was first introduced, an assessment of approximately 80 tax-based city facilities was conducted to help Facility Services plan and prioritize accessibility projects. The assessment included a list of recommended upgrades, some of which have already been completed. For example, the main floor washroom renovation at the YWCA. The continuation of this program will allow additional projects to be implemented. Next slide, please. The next project is the Facility Assessment and Energy Efficiency Upgrades. So this is also a continuation of a previously approved program from the 2018 CIP, Project D13. The program involves dedicated funding to perform energy efficiency upgrades at city-owned facilities, the purpose of which is to reduce operating costs and reduce the city's environmental footprint. Example projects could include building envelope improvements, mechanical and electrical system retrofits, combined heat and power systems, and renewable energy technologies. Since the program was introduced, an energy audit of 17 major city facilities was conducted to help Facility Services plan and prioritize energy efficiency projects. The results of the audit were presented to City Council last year, and the initial project plan is underway. The first project implemented under this program was the arena lighting replacement at Henderson Ice Center, which was completed last year. The continuation of this program will allow additional projects to be implemented. Next slide, please. And that concludes our presentation.
Questions from Council. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro. Did he leave? Councillor Carlson.
Thanks, Mayor Spearman. Deputy Mayor is here now if he wants to go first.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro, do you want to go first? I did call your name. I think he's muted or he's got a technical problem. Please proceed.
No, I didn't have my hand up on purpose if my hand was up.
Sorry. Thanks, Mayor Spearman. Thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question. It just says $300,000 a year for one project and $100,000 a year. Do we know, is that for 5 years or is it forever and ever? Amen, because we will always have a project.
The intent was that it would be $300,000 per year ongoing. And for as long as the intent is ongoing because we'd likely always have a project. We have several projects planned right now, and we still have the capacity to do several more. So this program could easily continue on for the next 4-year cycle. At which time we can report on progress.
The ask is for just the 4-year cycle, for the 400 or the 300,000 a year for the one, and $100,000 a year for the other for the 4 years.
Yes, the intent would be that it could potentially be an ongoing program beyond that 4-year window. There certainly would be enough projects to continue on past that point.
And thank you. And I really do like seeing, and I'm scrolling to it right now. In the efficiency upgrades, that's $15,000 a year savings. Is that's what I'm reading that correctly?
That's correct, and that would be along with every $300,000. So by the end of the first 4 years, for instance, after we've implemented 1.2, that number would be $60,000, and that's based on the assumption that the program would yield at least a 20-year payback on any projects that are selected.
Perfect. That answered my question. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Spearman.
My question is probably one where the answer is obvious, but we were talking about energy conservation projects or energy efficiency projects. These aren't in any way included elsewhere in the submission as energy conservation projects, right? These are improvements to existing buildings as opposed to new initiatives. Is that how we understand that differently?
That's correct. The projects that we are contemplating in this program would be retrofits to existing facilities.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from council? Seeing none, I will thank our presenters and we will deal with the resolution. Is Councillor Parker there?
Mr. Mayor, I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, just distributing resolutions more or less equitably.
Thank you, sir.
Moved by Councillor Parker. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentation as information. Councillor Parker.
Just to add to your thank you for the presentation, it's greatly appreciated. I just called the question.
Okay, thank you. Question's been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to 4.5. Presenter is Mr. Hiroshi Okubo, Parks Manager, Projects for Cemetery Services. Welcome. Please proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Hiroshi Okubo with Cemetery Services. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you the Cemetery Services projects. I do have 3 of them for you to consider. The first one, please, is the Mountain View Cemetery Irrigation Automation, blocks A through G. This irrigation automation was first identified as a project back in 2011 to 2020 CIP D21 Parks Asset Management. The intent of this project was to catch up on the backlog of parks infrastructure, keeping them up to date with current standards. In 2012, it was decided through a prioritization process that with the limited resources to delay the irrigation automation at Mountain View and put those resources to the completion of the automation of school fields. It allowed for the eventual elimination of using night waterers where they moved handpipe to water turf at night. This proposed CIP project will automate approximately 9 more acres to the existing 21 acres that is currently automated using the cemetery's standalone irrigation system. The completion of this project will have roughly converted just over half the cemetery from the existing 1/3. Most of the design work for this these sections, have been completed through a previous project. So it would be a matter of having a consultant review the plans and then completed the install if this was approved. Next slide, please. This second project is the Royal View Memorial Cemetery Phase 2 and 3. This CIP project is for radar purposes. It falls within the 2022 to 2031 10-year period, but we request funding for this in the 2026 to 2035 CIP. So again, it will be submitted in 4 years' time. This project contains both Phase 2 and 3. I'm going to start with Phase 3, Phase 3 portion first. That's identified on your slide. So So this is for the layout, design, and landscape construction of the already built interment section for 2028. The timeline has changed from before, as it's been moved up 4 years due to different cultures and different groups having come forward and identified a need. Some of these groups consist of Orthodox Christians or Catholics in the community who want a east-west alignment, which we currently don't have at this cemetery. There's also the Chinese and Asian community who prefer the headstones to the west. There's also some Japanese that want headstones to the north. So different cultures have different beliefs or ways they do interments. There's also the veterans who want a section at this cemetery to be close to those that may be interred there. As well as we are starting to promote more of the cremation type interments. So there are different options that we like to offer there. This project will include the design of the plot layout, installing underground irrigation to the existing park system, and converting the existing dryland grasses and wildflowers to an irrigated turf mixture. So in other words, we like to have that this cemetery or this new section interment ready. The second part is identified as phase 2, and it is the design and construction of an on-site administration building, which would house a reception area, offices, meeting rooms, washrooms, and parking, as well as considering a flexible community space, which could be rented out to the community as a celebration or reception hall, which would ultimately help the sustainability of the cemeteries going forward. This new building will allow cemetery services to transition from Mountain View Cemetery to Royal View Memorial Cemetery for plot sales and interments. Interments will take place at Mountain View Cemetery for the foreseeable future, but we no longer have we no longer are able to offer casket plots for purchase at Mountain View Cemetery, except in the field of honor section, as we have run out of space there. Next slide, please. So this is the third project. This project is similar to the last project, it is for radar purposes. It does fall into the 2026 to 2035 CIP for consideration and funding. The city of Lethbridge maintains the physical assets of the Nikki Japanese garden, including the pathways inside the garden. The city has a lease and a fee-for-service agreement with the Lethbridge and District Japanese Garden Society to offer programming of the facility to the community. The life cycle replacement of the asphalt pathways has been on the city's radar since 2010, leading up to the 2017 50th anniversary. The original constructor of the garden, Dr. Sugimoto, on his many visits, has insisted that the integrity of the garden is impacted by the condition of the pathways. He had asked that we not replace the pathways prior to the anniversary, as a new asphalt or a blacktop would be inappropriate for anniversary celebrations. The pathways were last inspected in 2016 by an independent consultant, and it was determined the pathways were safe for usage, but to their understanding, not necessarily appropriate for a Japanese garden. They recommended that we wait till after the anniversary to make plans to replace them. Our efforts today to maintain and repair has been to cut out or remove asphalt areas where possible, and also by using maintenance methods such as road maintenance, such as crack sealing. With the attempts that we've made in the early 1990s, the late 1990s and early 2000s with crack sealing and smearing of the tar, the smearing of the tar is actually more pronounced the cracks, and it's more become more unsightly We've also made constant attempts in the past annually to find less abrasive ways to repair those, but we haven't found anything really appropriate for it. The cost that's identified there is identified using different materials besides asphalt, such as concrete, but it would be up to the stakeholders at that time to determine what is best fit for the garden going forward. Regardless, we have been advised that the existing asphalt should be removed to the base layer so that we could put a new asphalt or concrete or any other material. That concludes my presentations. Thank you for your time. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Mr. Okubu, for the information, for the work. First of all, if you don't mind, Mayor Spearman, I'm just going to make the statement because I've already received 2 emails. We're not approving capital projects here. People think we're just approving these and away we go. These are all proposals. So thank you, Mr. Okubu, for actually making that statement. And maybe in the future, motions could be written that way as well. Proposed projects, things of that nature. So I'll just throw that out there. When we're talking about the development of future cemeteries, you talked about converting native grass and flowers to the Victorian garden, so to speak, the green lawn and whatnot. Has there been any conversation about xeriscaping instead? I'm sensitive to the fact that, what did I read yesterday? 12.1 millimeters of precipitation has fallen since January 1st. Well, we all want a loved one interred in a very beautiful environment. That beautiful environment tends to be for us more than it does for them. But you could do a very classical, very beautiful xeriscape feature or features or cemetery that requires less to no water and would lower in many cases the maintenance of that as well. Has there been any consideration or conversation about that for new cemeteries?
Not really. Internally, yes, we have, but externally, not really, because when we do have instances where we do have like water or irrigation breakdowns and the grass starts turning brown, we get lots of complaints, like a lot. And so it's like, I guess it's probably the #1 complaint is turf. So yeah. We do consider those, and we do have been putting more like mulch beds and those kind of types of facilities in. But ultimately, because the rest of all the other cemeteries are quite green, it's all irrigated, we tend to go towards that, the green turf. There are other cemeteries that have gone to totally no water. They've just put in turf, and then when it rains, it turns green. And once it quits raining or there is no irrigation to back it up, so they have brown cemeteries. And that was one of the considerations that we've talked about, especially with the reductions, budget reductions that we had discussed.
And that's, thank you. And that's kind of the direction I'm heading with this thought is, we can turf it and no irrigation, and it goes brown from today until the snow flies in October, November. But when I ask about the xeriscaping, I'm thinking more of actual conscious thought and design in such a way that still provides that aesthetic for the aesthetic for us and a beautiful environment, but is less water intensive. So when irrigation does go down, it's less of an impact, because turf has a huge carrying cost to it, a huge operating cost. So that's why I'm wondering if that conversation has occurred, or if there's an opportunity to have that conversation.
We also do, as our normal practices, we don't fully water. Like, we water enough to keep everything green. As well as in Royal View, we do have a green burial section, which is no water. Like, it's the grass, existing grass. We will seed it to like wild rye or tressa wheatgrass or something like that, and then eventually the native grasses will come in and take it over. But that, again, that takes a bit of time and some rainfall, I guess.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Mr. Okubo, for that presentation. So getting back to the natural burial area that we have in Royalview, is there a very is there much uptake of that for people requesting those kind of burials?
Actually, we've had quite a few people request. I believe there are 4 or 5 burials there already.
Yeah.
And we have been open since since February of 2019.
Yeah, and I often walk along there, and I know that if Councillor Kaufman, in order for you to, if you haven't been there, you should see how it's laid out. I think if that would be the future of our whole cemetery system, that would be way more sustainable than what we have. But it's like Mr. Okupa said, your requests from the public are along the religious lines, and they're less inclined to more reluctant to not have those more natural burials. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, yes and no. Religion aside, like there are people that get quite upset, especially their loved ones, right? And if we're not looking after the turf properly, or having, I don't know, maybe it's more compassionate care with the turf. We do hear it. So it is kind of a tightrope that you're walking of how much water to put in, how it should be cut, how often it's cut. Because the one thing, like, we want to have, happy, have our community happy with the way the cemeteries look. So it is quite the effort on our staff.
Okay, great, thank you.
Are there any further questions from council? Okay, I see none. I have another resolution here. Councillor Carlson, are you there?
Yes, I knew I'd get the cemetery one.
Well, I know you're familiar with cemeteries in the area. From Councillor Carlson, be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee received the report and presentation as information. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Mr. Kubo, for the information. I know that there's a lot more work to maintaining cemeteries than a lot of people realize, and I know that there is a great plan around work in the cemetery and what needs to be done when. So this is great to see the irrigation program that is being recommended, and then the others that are on the radar. So thank you very much, and to you and everyone for the work, and I will call the question.
Question has been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you. We'll now go on to 4.6. Mr. Robin Harper, you're going to present on projects for recreation and culture, please.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Pleased to be here today to present some projects in Section D for recreation and culture. We have 5 out of 6 that we are presenting today. Today, these include the Henderson Ice Center upgrade, Fritzik pool renovation, arena replacement, indoor court, multi-purpose space functional assessment study, and a Nikko Yuko Japanese garden master plan. Next slide, please. First one up is Henderson Ice Center upgrade. Henderson Ice Center was constructed in 1972 with 4 small dressing rooms that have shared washroom and shower amenities between 2 sets of rooms, and a small officials room. We recently completed a replacement of the refrigeration slab, the boards and glass systems, as well as upgraded energy efficiency lighting over the playing surface. The renovation has increased the size of the ice surface to a more standard NHL sized surface. This is a much needed functional upgrade that will provide for 4 additional dressing rooms that are larger and more functional, and that also have their own washroom and shower amenities for each room. The upgrade will also include the renovation of the existing rooms that are there to increase the size and to provide each with washroom and shower amenities. The existing officials room that is there now lacks adequate washroom facilities and is very small. The renovation will also provide for a much more functional space. A proper female change room is also included in the plan, as well as accessibility upgrades and upgrades to facility services. Part of this plan also is to look at accessible washrooms that service the SLP skate park and are accessible from the outside even when the arena is not open. Next slide, please. Fritzik pool renovation. Fritzik pool was constructed as an outdoor pool in 1949 and was later covered. So this is a 72-year-old facility. Finance Committee and City Council has asked administration to bring forward a project for the proposed renovation or replacement of the facility. The project we're recommending here would include short-term recommendations that address the current and immediate requirements such as the basin, as well as functional and barrier-free upgrades. These upgrades will allow the facility to continue to operate until such time as a comprehensive plan is developed for the entire facility, as well as for the Civic Commons area. Next slide, please. The arena replacement. This project would be an addition of another twin ice surface in the city. It includes the demolition of an existing aging facility. This project has been on the CIP list previously, but it has been pushed back as it was not deemed a high priority at the time. With recent life cycle investments, this would be recommended to fall outside of the 4-year funded window. Project tasks would include stakeholder consultation, design and construction and demolition of an existing aging facility. The location for this facility has not been determined at this time. Next slide, please. Indoor court multipurpose space functional study. This project is for a functional study to determine what a multipurpose sport court facility might look like. Although the joint use agreement provides community groups gym and court space for programming, as well as the addition of the ATV center has provided space, community groups continue to communicate to administration that there is a shortage of this type of space. Community groups are unable to access the space required for their current levels of participation and as such are unable to grow their sport or activity. This is supported in the recent Recreation and Culture Master Plan and engagement that we went through. So this is for a functional study only. Next slide, please. The Nikki Japanese Garden Master Plan. This project would be to develop a master plan for the garden and will focus on 3 areas. The horticultural elements of the garden facilities and structures, as well as the overall garden operations. It will provide a condition assessment and a long-term plan to ensure that the garden maintains the relationship with the original garden design and intent, and will also assist in establishing and maintaining standards and practices in order to maintain the designations as municipal and provincial historical resources. Next slide, please. Open to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, questions from councillors? Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Mr. Harper. On your slide, and I'll just have to go off screen here for a second, regarding the Fritzik pool, you've got the motion from A132, our Finance Committee recommendations back in November. What you've got here is she proposing upgrades to keep it going. What the motion back in November provided for was an actual strategy for renovation or replacement. You're proposing renovation only, no replacement, or is there a strategy coming forward for replacement as well?
There will be a strategy coming forward at some point in replacement of that facility, but it would be based on a comprehensive plan in regards to the Civic Commons area and also for the Fritzik facility. It doesn't necessarily mean that a replacement of that facility would be in that location, but it allows us the opportunity to continue to provide the service and give us some time to really look at the space, the facility itself, and the civic commons to determine if it's still the best area to provide that facility or put that facility.
Okay, so the short-term strategy is, I'm going to say exhibition warm, safe, and dry. It won't be warm and dry, but to safe and keep the facility running as long as possible until that master plan or some sort of planning is done for it. Do you have a timeline? Are we looking at another 5, 6, 7 years of the same?
No, I think the intent is that, I'm not sure if it would be 5 to 6 years, but the intent for the Civic Commons comprehensive plan would be in the next couple of years that would take place and be finalized. So at that time, we would have the opportunity to, if it was reflected that this is still the ideal location, that we would plan to look at a replacement at that time.
Okay, and the $530,000 is a one-time. That's not ongoing over the 4-year cycle.
That is at one time, yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Are there any further questions from members of council? I see none. So move forward with the resolution. Okay. Councillor Miyashiro has left the meeting. Councillor Kaufman, have you sponsored a motion yet?
I haven't. Thank you.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Kaufman. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentation as information. These are proposed projects, as you have indicated. Go ahead, Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Yes, these proposed projects moving forward to CIP. Thank you, Mr. Harper, to you and your staff for the work behind this, and call the question.
Okay, thank you. Question has been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? There are none. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to 4.7. Mr. Scott Greco, Transit Operations Manager, welcome to speak to us about transit projects. Mr. Greco.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to all the committee members for allowing us to present our 2 projects for Section D level projects. Next slide, please. So Transit, as you're aware, is in the process of implementing its newly designed CityLink transit network for the entire city of Lethbridge. CityLink routes have been adjusted to reflect the required resources, especially in the way of frequency, based on the Transit Master Plan, customer requirements, and ridership data. The project will allow Lethbridge Transit to allocate resources to make transit relevant to the people who ride the bus, and also valuable for people who don't ride the bus. Demand response technology and operations will be allocated for low demand areas, providing customers options to access the CityLink transit network via terminal hubs. In order to optimize CityLink's effectiveness, city hubs are an integral piece for our customers. Some of the features of these city hubs include safety, accessibility, bike share, multimodal, reduction and eliminating costly loops within our transit network, ridership growth opportunities, and of course, all of the terminal hubs that we plan on putting in are focused on destination areas within the city. Next slide, please. So the first main terminal that I would like to talk about, this would fall outside of the 4-year CIP funding window. The first main terminal would move the college terminal to the NMAX Center, to the frequent transit network, and provide access to the events with our with our friends at the NMAX. Again, the project's located outside the 4-year window, and it's estimated at 2.14 million. Next slide, please. The second main terminal would be strategically located where transit is needed in our community, close to Exhibition Park, with also a focus in the Henderson Park area, Japanese Gardens. So these are, again, major destination points within the city. This project, as well as within, is outside of the 4-year CIP window, and it's estimated at 1.821 million. Next slide. So the next slide is what I'm showing here is our future transit network. So it's near completion in the redesign. So I've attached it to just kind of demonstrate where our on-demand zones are. So as you can see in the zones, you can see A, B, C, and D. We have these different zones where we actually have a lower demand for transit. And so the demand response technology will connect those demand response zones into the frequent transit CityLink network, which are the lines or the routes that are located in green. And again, CityLink is the objective of that service is to give more frequent transit service and to provide faster transit service. So the city hubs will also provide a safe location for demand buses to wait for customers, as opposed to having them run back into neighborhoods empty and sometimes on a route at certain times of the day or evening. This model will also prevent our buses from having returned to the bus barns and then go back out for demand response customers. Again, just to emphasize, the hubs will optimize the CityLink network. Next slide. So these next City Hub terminals they're considered smaller type terminal hubs. The first one is the West Highlands City Hub. It's in a very high density area with local shopping, a lot of university students and ridership within that area. So this project is within our 4-year CIP cycle. And so in order to optimize the CityLink network, this location would have wayfinding, signage, bicycle racks, and a heated shelter for our customer base. Next slide. The Northeast Hub is an area with local shopping, and it has a lot of ridership area where we would actually have to purchase some land. So we do have an existing terminal in the north. Unfortunately, as the city grows, ridership patterns can change. We would still utilize that existing facility, but the majority of our riders are within that area are going into that northeast side. So land would be required for this project. And again, it would be within the 4-year cycle because we're in the development phases of CityLink. This is estimated at 2.95 million. Next slide, please. The next City Hub terminal is located in Southgate. It's a very busy location of the city, whereby transit, in our current network, we complete a loop through a residential neighborhood. This newly located hub would be very efficient, would require a newly installed traffic circle at Southgate Boulevard and 6 Mile Road on the south side. It would provide a safe turnaround location and also a location, again, for those demand response buses to have a location where you're not sending buses out into neighborhoods. The project is estimated at 1.44 million. There are a few operational savings with respect to not doing these unnecessary loops within the system. So most transit properties are trying to streamline, make their routes more direct, and trying to avoid these unnecessary loops. Next slide, please. The next city hub is would be in Sunridge. Again, it would enable us a safe turnaround and demand response location on the southernmost portion of the west side. The project itself is within the 4-year CIP cycle, and it's estimated at $377,000. Next slide, please. ATB is a major destination for the community. There's already a pull-out location situated at the ATB Center. And again, we would upgrade some of the amenities. We would be putting in a heated shelter, wayfinding signage, and bicycle racks. A lot of transit properties are moving to more towards a multimodal system. Again, bike share and even car share services located throughout many of the communities. Just to close, again, I'd just like to highlight transit's future and our connectivity to the community, in saying that city hubs are going to optimize our CityLink transit network, which is currently being developed. They're needed to integrate demand response technology. They're going to provide ridership opportunities, provide enhanced accessibility, bike share opportunities, and these are going to be strategically located in areas where transit service is really needed. That covers off our CityLink, City Hub projects. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please. The next project that I'd like to discuss is the electric bus and charging infrastructure project proposal. As many of you might be aware that diesel buses are going to be phased out by the year 2030. There's a major movement toward e-bus technology, including funding announcements from the federal government. Capital costs are going to be most likely offset by some of the operational savings. Red Deer has in their fleet, half of their buses are already CNG and the other half are diesel. They've just accepted their last CNG bus, and so the movement towards technology is moving very fast in the way of zero emission buses. This project cost is estimated at $19.6 million. Next slide. So again, just to emphasize that the electric bus, some of the capital costs, 92%, like electric buses are 92% more expensive than diesel. However, we estimate approximately $33,000 per year per bus in operational savings. And so again, just to emphasize this movement towards electric bus technology, with many transit properties moving forward and in the way of grant funding, and even using within their existing fleet plan the movement towards electric bus technology. Next slide, please. So this is a recent announcement that was announced on March 5th. We're waiting on more information for grant funding. This announcement here from the federal government, it was to discuss $15 billion towards the purchase of 5,000 zero emission buses over the next 5 years. That creates a lot of demand for this technology, and so that would be the push for us to get involved in this technology sooner rather than later with that type of announcement coming forward. Next slide, please. So the attached slide shows our current original 10-year diesel fleet plan. So if you could see, when we set our fleet plan, we plan out a diesel bus has an average life cycle of roughly 15 years. So these buses are slated for replacement in the years. I just want to highlight that the blue buses here, the highlights in blue, are buses that are slated for replacement within our current budget cycle. And as you can see, the total fleet replacement plan for diesel buses is 18.2 million. Next slide, please. With this upcoming shift to zero emission buses, we need to move fast to integrate this technology, given this recent announcement. Procurement timelines for the technology are roughly 18 months to get an electric bus. It's recommended that we use the current budget cycle federal gas tax grant funding to purchase 3 zero-emission electric buses at a cost of $3.67 million, plus infrastructure costs of $890,000. Just one quick note, this federal gas tax funding is money that's already earmarked within the existing budget. Next slide, please. We would commence immediately to begin to integrate electric bus technology. In looking at the overall fleet plan from an electric bus lens, the fleet replacement cost is estimated at $35 million. Again, we're waiting on further information to this global change to electric bus technology for capital grant funding. And yeah, I'd like to thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Grieco. Councillor Kaufman? Left over? Okay. Are there any questions from councillors? There was a comment about Red Deer moving from what, clean natural gas technology moving to electric? On one of the slides, I see it, electric bus technology. We don't have any natural gas buses ourselves, right? We're just moving from, I think we had clean diesel to electricity. Is that correct?
Yeah, in our current fleet right now, we don't have any natural gas technology within our fleet. We do have 4 hybrid buses, which is a mix between clean diesel and electric, and the remaining fleet is all clean diesel. Again, with the notion in mind that all of this technology is basically going to be obsolete. All of the grant funding coming forward is going to be for electric bus technology.
Okay. And previously, we've had issues with maintenance of, I think, even the hybrid buses. If there were issues, do we anticipate we'll be able to maintain the electric buses ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, the hybrid buses, they do have some of the issues that we do have are mostly operational. They're not necessarily mechanical. Electric bus technology really wants to go. So when you hit the gas pedal and it's icy out, the tires they want to spin because it's basically the energy's there immediately. So what we would have to do is operationalize that type of technology. So we'd have to train the operators in how to properly operate the bus. So we would take those operational considerations in mind.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from councillors? No? Okay, is Councillor Higgin there?
I am here.
Okay. If you can sponsor this motion, moved by Councillor Higgin, Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentation as information.
I will call for the vote. And first, thanks, Mr. Grieco, for the presentation, and I'll call for the vote.
Okay. Thank you. Question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Thank you. Okay, so now we're down to the submission by our treasurer, Ms. Pinkson, on the projects, day 2 of 4, moved by Councillor Carlson. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentation as information. Ms. Pinkson, did you have anything to say at this time? Okay. Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Just wondering if my colleagues have any questions. I had one, if I may start, through you to Ms. Pinkson, if I can. Haley, the sheets look different than they have in the past. They're just blank. You sort of alluded to it, that the funding year and the operating costs will be placed at a later time. Will we, or is that up to council, or is that something administration will prioritize and present as a possibility to council?
Mayor Spearman, through to Councillor Carlson. So this is consistent with, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can. My internet is terrible. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry. No, this is consistent with the approach that we took last time. For the project presentations, the sheet was just provided with the presentation in terms of giving some high-level overview about the project. And then for the draft document that is prepared for council for the week of budget deliberations, we will be slotting in the proposed timing of the projects based on what the project managers would propose in terms of recommendation. But what's going to happen is there's going to be a whole bunch of projects that given the limited amount of funding, so all the sheets will likely just say undetermined funding. With the exception of the 3 ongoing that we have not included as part of the available funding amount. We assumed that those would be carried on. If council wants to pull those out or make a different decision about those, then we can adapt to that situation. But all of the projects will then just have the proposed timing and likely just show as undetermined funding. But this is consistent with how we handled Section D in the last budget cycle, just about presenting the project and not kind of starting to target projects against each other at this point in terms of just giving general information about each project.
Thank you, but you will take the time or to say this one is kind of a priority, so we'll move it up. This one can probably wait till year 5. You will be doing that for us, correct?
We will be showing the year that the project is recommended. That won't necessarily mean that we can fund all of that in the year it's recommended. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Thank you.
Unless there's any further questions, I'll call for the vote.
I see no further questions. The question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. That motion carries unanimously. Okay, in-camera motions. First one from Councillor Campbell, Human Resources Matter. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting discussions and documents with respect to the Human Resources Matter remain confidential pursuant to Section 17, harmful to personal privacy, 19, confidential evaluations, and 29, information that is or will be available to the public of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Councillor Campbell.
Call a question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Next, I have a resolution from Councillor Carlson, Performing Arts Centre update. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting discussions and documents with respect to Performing Arts Centre update remain confidential pursuant to sections 23, local public body confidences, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And further be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee recommends City Council proceed with the confidential direction provided during the closed session. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I call for the vote.
Question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed?
Yeah, Joe.
Okay. 8-1 or 7-1 because Councillor Miyashiro has left. Thank you. Next, I have a motion.
I don't know if you saw my hand. I don't know if my mic was muted, but I did say no as well. I don't know if I was muted.
6-2. That motion carries 6-2. Councillors Higgin and Morrow opposed. Thank you. Next motion is COVID-19 Relief Request Framework, Lethbridge Hurricanes Hockey. Moved by Councillor Kaufman. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee direct the closed meeting discussions and documents with respect to COVID-19 Relief Request Framework, Lethbridge Hurricanes Hockey Club remain confidential pursuant to sections 23, local public body confidences, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And further be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council approve the request for waiver/cancellation up to $35,760 in rent payments for the 12 regular season games, with funding coming from Municipal Revenue Stabilization Reserve, MRSR. Councillor Kaufman.
Mayor Spearman, if I can please interject. Sorry, Councillor Carlson, I'm going to abstain from this particular vote. So I'm sorry. I wanted to step away, but I wanted to give an explanation. So I'll come back on here in a couple minutes.
Thanks. That's why my hand was up. Thanks, Blaine.
Okay. Councillor Higgin has abstained. Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. The directive is to move the request from the Lethbridge Hurricanes for a deferral or waiver of their payments to the next regular meeting of City Council. And I'll call for my colleagues' support.
Okay. Question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Can we invite Councillor Higgin back to the meeting?
I'm sending him a text as we speak, Your Worship.
Thank you.
He should know. It should be fairly quick. He should be here in a second.
I am back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next motion, again moved by Councillor Kaufman. COVID-19 Relief Request Framework, University of Lethbridge Conservatory of Music. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting discussions and documents with respect to COVID-19 Relief Request Framework, University of Lethbridge Conservatory of Music, remain confidential pursuant to sections 23, local public body confidences, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And further be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council approve the request for waiver/cancellation of $35,500 in lease payments between December 2020 and March 2021, with funding coming from the Municipal Revenue Stabilization Reserve, MRSR. Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Is the same as the previous motion. This is just a recommendation to Council to deliberate this issue. It's under the relief request framework, and I seek question or comment from Council.
Are there any questions or comments? Acting Mayor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I would just like an explanation as to what this relief is for. They're not using the building, and that's mainly what the relief request is coming in. I don't know if administration could actually just explain what this is in regards to and what will be canceled.
Mr. Dalton or designate?
That's fine. If no one can speak to it, it's just going to council for a decision. So I'm okay. That's fine.
There will be
Thank
more
you,
information
Councillor.
provided when it goes to city council meeting and a further explanation. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing further, question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed?
Yeah, Joe.
Okay, so carries 7-1. Okay, adjournment, moved by Councillor Morrow, that we do now adjourn the meeting of the Economic Standing Policy Committee until Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. Councillor Morrow?
Question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Is now exiting.